don't take my word for it. Look at the facts. His own government admits there are as many as 500,000 people in Canada illegally.
The political landscape in Canada is more turbulent than ever, with one name at the center of it all: Justin Trudeau. Once seen as a symbol of hope and progress, the Prime Minister now finds himself surrounded by scandals, controversial decisions, and leadership failures that have left his grip on power slipping. Take immigration, for instance. The situation at the border has spiraled out of control, with thousands entering Canada without proper documentation. Critics argue Trudeau has failed to protect the country, focusing instead on lofty ideals that feel detached from the reality faced by everyday Canadians. The growing sense of insecurity is palpable, as citizens question why their safety seems to take a back seat to political posturing. And then there's the economy. With housing costs skyrocketing and inflation squeezing the middle class, Trudeau's approach appears more like patchwork than a strategic plan. Government programs and temporary measures have only deepened the deficit, leaving Canadians wondering if their Prime Minister has any real solutions. Every day, families struggle to make ends meet, and Trudeau's responses feel increasingly out of touch. What's perhaps most damning, however, is the string of ethical lapses within his own party. Accusations of MPs exploiting Indigenous identities for political gain and a lack of accountability in handling public funds have cast a shadow over Trudeau's leadership. The cracks within the Liberal Party are widening, with even some of his closest allies beginning to question his ability to lead. How can Canadians trust him to manage the country when he can't even keep his own house in order? On the streets, frustration is boiling over. Social media is rife with posts criticizing Trudeau for focusing more on cultural and identity politics than on the bread-and-butter issues that matter most. The sentiment is clear: Canadians feel forgotten. While Trudeau promotes inclusivity and diversity, many believe his relentless emphasis on these topics has alienated a significant portion of the population. We need real solutions, not virtue signaling, they say. Even on the international stage, Trudeau's reputation has taken a hit. His strained relationship with the U.S., Canada's largest trading partner, has drawn scrutiny. Instead of fostering strong ties, he's been accused of mishandling critical alliances, leaving Canada to navigate trade deals and diplomacy with diminishing influence. Meanwhile, controversial decisions, such as bypassing the U.S. to secure an agreement with Indonesia, have only fueled the narrative of Trudeau's declining leadership. Amidst this chaos, one figure is capitalizing on Trudeau's missteps: Pierre Poilievre. The Conservative leader has been relentless in his critique, painting Trudeau as a reactionary leader incapable of addressing problems before they spiral out of control. Poilievre's vision of change is resonating with a growing number of Canadians tired of a government that feels more focused on optics than outcomes. The question now isn't whether Trudeau can restore his popularity. It's how much longer he can hold on before his leadership unravels entirely. With mounting opposition, a divided party, and a restless public, the Trudeau era seems to be nearing its end. All that's left to see is whether Canadians are ready to close this chapter and embrace a new direction. As Trudeau's government stumbles from one crisis to another, the cracks in his leadership are no longer just visible, they're undeniable. What was once a carefully cultivated image of a progressive, charismatic leader has now given way to a perception of ineptitude and detachment. Even those who once defended him are beginning to waver, questioning whether Trudeau's vision for Canada aligns with the reality of what the nation needs. The frustration isn't confined to the Conservative opposition or disenchanted voters. Rumors of unrest within the Liberal Party are growing louder, with whispers of MPs privately expressing doubt over Trudeau's ability to lead them into the next election. Some have even floated the idea of a leadership review, fearing that sticking with Trudeau might cost them not only the election but their political careers. It's becoming clear that his once loyal base is no longer united behind him. Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre continues to position himself as the alternative. His speeches hit at the heart of Canadian frustrations: the rising cost of living, unchecked crime, and a government that seems to prioritize symbolism over substance. His promise of a tougher, more pragmatic approach resonates with those who feel Trudeau's leadership has been all style and no substance. Poilievre doesn't just criticize Trudeau's failures. He offers a stark contrast, painting himself as the decisive, no-nonsense leader Canadians crave. Public opinion polls reflect this shifting sentiment. Support for the Liberals has waned, while the Conservatives have gained ground, especially in regions once considered Liberal strongholds. Among young voters, a demographic Trudeau once captivated, there's growing disillusionment. They see skyrocketing housing prices and dwindling job prospects and feel abandoned by the government they thought would champion their cause. And then there's the international embarrassment. From awkward interactions with global leaders to policy missteps that have alienated key allies, Trudeau's performance on the world stage has left many Canadians cringing. His inability to secure meaningful wins for Canada in trade or diplomacy has only deepened the sense that he's out of his depth. While Trudeau once positioned himself as a global statesman, today, his leadership looks increasingly isolated and ineffective. The narrative of Trudeau's decline is no longer just a Conservative talking point. It's becoming the dominant story in Canadian politics. Every day seems to bring another headline about rising crime rates, unaffordable living costs, or another Liberal scandal. Each misstep fuels the perception that Trudeau's government is running out of steam and, perhaps, out of time. As Canada edges closer to its next election, one thing is clear. The Trudeau brand, once a symbol of hope and change, has been tarnished. The voters who once rallied behind him are now looking for someone different. The question isn't just whether Trudeau can turn things around, it's whether Canadians are willing to give him the chance. And for a growing number, the answer seems to be a resounding no. As the political winds shift, the question of who will step into Trudeau's shoes becomes a focal point of conversation, not just in political circles but around kitchen tables and in coffee shops across the country. The frustration with Trudeau isn't limited to his failures but extends to a broader sense that he no longer understands the struggles of ordinary Canadians. Rising crime, economic insecurity, and a housing market spiraling out of control have become daily realities for many, and Trudeau's responses feel increasingly tone-deaf. In small towns and big cities alike, people are venting their anger. Social media is flooded with stories of families being priced out of their homes and communities grappling with rising violence. And while Trudeau's government releases polished statements about inclusivity and progress, the lived experiences of Canadians tell a different story. It's not just Conservatives who are speaking out. Voices from all walks of life are questioning whether Trudeau's priorities align with the needs of the nation. The cracks within the Liberal Party are another open secret. Some MPs, especially those from swing ridings, are reportedly growing anxious about the fallout from Trudeau's missteps. With an election on the horizon, they fear that his leadership might not just cost the Liberals the majority, but hand power to the Conservatives altogether. Internal dissent is bubbling beneath the surface, with murmurs of backroom discussions about whether Trudeau should step aside in favor of a fresher face. For now, no one dares to challenge him publicly, but the whispers grow louder with each passing scandal. And then there's the public perception of Trudeau himself. The man who once seemed so relatable, posing for selfies, rolling up his sleeves for community events, now comes across as aloof. His attempts to connect with Canadians often fall flat, with critics accusing him of being more focused on crafting his image than addressing the real issues. The contrast between Trudeau and Poilievre couldn't be starker. While Trudeau is painted as a leader bogged down by ideology and indecision, Poilievre presents himself as pragmatic, determined, and ready to take on the challenges headfirst. For Poilievre, the moment is ripe. Every misstep by Trudeau is an opportunity to underscore his own message, that Canada needs a leader who will prioritize the economy, tackle crime, and secure the border. Poilievre's ability to channel the frustrations of average Canadians has bolstered his standing, with more people rallying to his side as they lose faith in Trudeau. His strategy is clear: frame the Liberals as out-of-touch elites and position the Conservatives as the champions of working Canadians. The stakes couldn't be higher. Trudeau's legacy is hanging by a thread, and the path forward looks increasingly uncertain. Can he find a way to reconnect with voters, silence dissent within his party, and prove that he still has what it takes to lead? Or will he become yet another casualty of political burnout, overshadowed by the rising tide of discontent? For now, one thing is certain. Canadians are watching closely, and their patience is wearing thin. With the next election looming, Trudeau faces the fight of his political life, not just to win but to survive.